The Story Dragon podcast presents The Dragon of Snowfall Ridge. In a tiny village nestled high in the snowy mountains, there lived a community of hardy folks who had learned to survive the harsh winters. The village, called Snowfall Ridge, was cut off from the rest of the world for most of the year. The winters were long, fierce, and filled with blizzards that seemed to come from nowhere, burying homes and fields under heavy layers of snow. The villagers often spent days stuck inside, waiting for the storm to pass. The one thing that they feared most was the dragon that lived high up in the mountains, in a dark cave near the peak. The old stories they passed down told that it was a fierce creature with scales that glittered like ice and fire that could melt the thickest of snow. 300 years ago, it had ruthlessly killed half the village and burned most of the structures to ash. The older folks had always warned the children to stay away from that cave, for fear that the dragon might return to finish them off, or even worse, curse the village with endless snowstorms. Despite these warnings, a group of curious kids couldn't resist the temptation to see this dragon for themselves. They didn't actually believe that it existed. They were fascinated by the stories they had heard, and the dragon to them seemed less like a monster and more like a mystery that just had to be solved. A few times a week, they would slip the notice of their parents, and they would climb the mountain. They'd go a little higher each time and stop when they either got too tired or when someone nearly fell. The oldest of them was Lena, a brave and curious girl with wild brown curls and an adventurous streak. Her younger brother, Finn, had a knack for making friends with animals and didn't talk very often. Their friend Thomas was short and scrawny and wore hand-me-downs from his older brother. And he was quite accident-prone, too, probably because his clothes were too big. They would carefully climb the snowy slopes, creeping past the edge of the village, and painstakingly make their way up until they reached the entrance of the dragon's cave. They had never seen the dragon fully, but they had heard strange sounds echoing from within the cave, like low growls, and on some nights, they heard a sound overhead that could only be the flapping of great and powerful wings as it flew the skies to hunt. They couldn't see through the thick clouds that brought the endless snow, which were also believed to be conjured by the dragon to punish them. Still, the children were not afraid. Life was boring in their remote confines, and they wanted to learn its secrets for themselves. "The village elders are only trying to scare us," said Lena. She shook the snow out of her hair as she addressed the other kids and convinced them to climb the mountain once more to get a look at the mythical beast. One cold afternoon, after a particularly heavy snowfall, the children found themselves at the mouth of the cave. But this time, something was different. A thick gray fog hung in the air, and the sky above the village was darkening ominously. "I think we should go back," Finn said, pulling at Lena's sleeve. "It's getting really bad out here." Lena looked up at the swirling sky. "We're so close, Finn. Just a little longer." But before she could say another word, a low rumble echoed from the cave, shaking the snow off the trees and the ground around them. A great shadow moved inside, and then a pair of glowing amber eyes appeared at the entrance. The children froze, their hearts racing, and for a long moment they thought they were done for. But then the creature stepped out, a massive dragon, its scales shimmering like a blanket of frost under the snowy sky. The dragon was enormous. Its wings tucked in at its sides were like great curtains of snow, and the breath that came out of its mouth was in puffs of mist. The children had never seen anything so magnificent or so terrifying, and then to their surprise, the dragon spoke, its voice deep but calm. "Why do you come here, children of Snowfall Ridge?" Lena swallowed nervously. We wanted to see you. We wanted to know if the stories were true." The dragon lowered its head, studying them with curiosity. "And what do the stories say about me?" "That you're a terrible creature who brings storms to the village?" Thomas said, his voice small. The dragon chuckled, a low rumble that echoed throughout the cave. "The storms come from the mountains, but not from me. I have no power over the wind or the snow. I have lived here for centuries, watching over this land. And yes, the blizzards come, but they are not my doing." Lena felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Then why does everybody think that you're dangerous?" The dragon thought, and then he spoke. "Years ago, your ancestors attacked me in this very cave while I slept. And sadly, they did not live to tell about it." The children were quiet, and then Finn asked nervously, How do we know that you won't eat us?" His face was full of suspicion, and he was nervous. The dragon threw back his head and let out a mighty laugh, flames bellowing high into the air. "You assume that you taste good? Humans taste awful. Little humans like you aren't even a snack. I eat whales, you brats." The dragon didn't speak for a while, and then it asked quietly, "I've always wondered, why do the people of your village live in a place that's so cold? Clearly it's difficult for you. You should go somewhere warmer." "We don't have a choice," Lena answered. "Our families have lived here for generations, and the snow at the bottom of the valley is too deep, and on the other side of the mountain, it's just desert, endlessly. But the snow, it does feel like it's closing in on us sometimes. We have had some difficult years." Lena furrowed her brow, pondering the question she had wondered about for so long. She wondered if this ancient dragon could answer it. "Could you tell us why this side of the mountain is so cold, but the other side is desert? It's so different, and neither place is easy to live in, really." The dragon considered this carefully, and then he spoke. "The wind from this side of the mountain pushes against the rock, and it travels upward and cools. This causes the thick clouds and the snow that you see, and the air that flows over the top of the mountain becomes dry and warm and falls into the roasting lands on the other side. That is what causes this to happen. This is why you live this way." Lena considered this and nodded, taking it all in. She could almost see the process happening in her mind and couldn't believe that she finally had her answer. It must be like this for all the mountains of the world, she thought. It seemed so simple when she looked at it this way, but living in the biting cold winds was the harsh reality. Just then, a crack of thunder shook the ground, followed by a gust of wind that lifted Tiny Thomas off his feet and over the ledge. "Thomas, no!" they yelled. And just as he was about to fall, the dragon extended one of its leathery wings, and the boy bounced off it and landed on the cold ground in front of his friends. Snowflakes began to swirl in the air, and the blizzard was arriving faster than they had initially expected. "We need to get back to the village," Lena shouted, but the wind was already too fierce to walk against. "Hurry, children, run to the village before the storm is here. You can make it if you hurry now." The children made their way back, holding the ledge as they went, but not without a promise. They promised the dragon that they would tell the villagers the truth, that he was not their enemy, but a protector. And so the children returned home, where the villagers were digging out from the snow. They found the village head, old Merrick, who had always warned them to stay away from the cave. "Where have you been?" he demanded. Lena took a deep breath, looking around at the other villagers who were listening closely. "We've been to the dragon's cave." The villagers gasped, but Lena continued. "The dragon is not dangerous. It helps us. It keeps us safe from the storm." At first, no one believed her. But over the days that followed, the children began to tell their story more and more. Merrick then banned them from discussing it. "Foolish children! You would have us roast in flames? Begone!" Not soon after, the biggest blizzard of all came. The snow quickly piled against the doors, making them impossible to open, and the villagers climbed from their windows, which were also beginning to be covered as well. "Let's go to the dragon. He'll save us," the children said. The villagers didn't want to, but they realized that they would die either way. So reluctantly, they began to climb the mountain. The older folks only made it part way up before they began to fall. The snow was deep, and they were unwell. They were pushed, pulled, and dragged up the mountain in homemade sleds and on animal skins. When they made it halfway up, the snow became too deep to go any farther. "Now what do we do?" they said. As they began to turn around to go back down the mountain, they realized that they had a new problem. Hungry eyes glowed from the dark as loping figures with long white and gray fur emerged from the cover of the trees. Over 30 big, hungry wolves began to encircle them. Closer and closer they came, as the villagers held spears and clubs, knowing full well they would not live to see the sunrise. Suddenly, a shadow fell from up above, and an enormous figure the size of a hill crashed down between the villagers and the predators. They looked up in shock and awe as the mighty dragon let out a terrible roar and breathed fire, creating a burning trench in front of the wolves. "Hear me, forest dwellers. These villagers are under my protection." As he spoke, flames licked out from between his teeth, and the air grew warm, melting the snow from nearby trees. The wolves growled and stepped forward, but the dragon stamped his mighty foot, sizzling the snow and melting all of the snow around the people and the wolves from sight. "Begone, or you will roast in my belly this very night." The wolves slunk back into the forest, leaving the villagers and the dragon standing on the side of the mountain. The huge dragon turned around and stopped a few paces by the crowd of people who parted to let him through. "Cover your ears," he said, and with a mighty roar, the dragon breathed a jet of fire up the mountain, melting the icy path all the way up to the top. "Climb, my friends. Tonight you will live." And from that day on, when the blizzards came, the villagers knew where to go. They took shelter in the dragon's cave, where they were warm from the snow, and over time, they came to understand that the dragon was not their enemy, but their ally against the winter's fiercest storms. And so, the village of Snowfall Ridge lived in peace, with the dragon watching over them, guarding them not just with fire, but with warmth, understanding, and friendship. The end. And there's another episode of the Story Dragon Podcast. You'll find another one every week. Have a great week, everyone. See you next time.